Welcome everybody to chapter 3 of LP Stories. My name is Camilo Neto Molina Edan, as my mother would want me to introduce myself. Well, most commonly known, Camilo Molina. I'm the percussionist, timbalero drummer, most recently for Eddie Palmieri, for the legend Eddie Palmieri. And I'm here today to share my story with you guys. So thanks to LP, DW for allowing me this time to speak to everyone. I'm also bilingual, so people who want to ask questions in Spanish can go ahead and do so. So yeah, let's get this going. I was born in New York City in El Barrio, Spanish Harlem. May 25th, 1990. I am still a young buck. My first influence, my first introduction to music was my mother. My mother was everything. She was a dancer. She was, my mother and father. She did everything, and her influence and her taste in music definitely influenced me and becoming what I currently am. She made sure that she exposed me and my sisters to not only, what was going on in New York City, but to our roots and to our family ties, to our family lineage and our lineage through music. She always told us, before you go out and you listen to hip hop and you listen to anything else that anybody else is doing, you have to know where you come from. So me being the youngest of three, my oldest sister and my oldest two sisters joined in I want to say mid-80s, mid to late 80s. Los Pleneros de la 𝗟𝗡𝗦 had a children's workshop in New York City, the 𝗟𝗡𝗦 𝗟𝗡𝗦 Children's Workshop, and they were part of the first class of that developed. And through there, they learned 𝗟𝗡𝗦 𝗟𝗡𝗦, which is traditional music from Puerto Rico. Plena being kind of the sung newspaper, which is a little bit more recent as far as the 1900s, and bomba being the oldest, one of the oldest living traditions we have in the Caribbean. They joined that program, and through there they learned to dance, the song, how to play, and believe me, my sisters are not musicians at all, but they can all sing you in plena and play up on pandereta and understand what it is. I came along in 1990, and according to my family and according to those who were around in that era, my instinct was natural. I have friends that I still know that I grew up with that saw me for the first time as an infant and said that my first instinct was once I could walk, was to run towards any barril that was in the Pleneros office or in the Pleneros rehearsal studio and just wail away. That's their first memory of me. And as I grew up, I grew around that. My sisters being involved in that, and my mother very much being involved in the Pleneros community and the activist community and the cultural community in general. I was surrounded by it. Parrandas, Christmas parties, Fiesta de Cruz that the Pleneros still are active with. And as it was kind of a struggle, I remember my mother saying to try to find me a teacher, to try to find me, and she had gone about it, and she was trying to put me, I was about 3 years old, maybe 4 years old, and tried to get me into the Pleneros workshop. But the youngest child at that time in the Pleneros workshop was maybe 8 or 9 years old, going more towards double digits. So they're working with kids with a lot more attention span and a lot more And she was kind of adamant about it. She was kind of like persistent. And obviously there were some people in the program that were like, no, he's too young. We can't babysit, not babysitters. And there were a few that saw the talent and were like, we're going to take him. Right. One of those people being one of the first people to put a drum in my hand, 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗡𝗦. As you can see, he was kind of everything to me up until his death. 2000, I don't even remember. I want to say 2010, around there. Him as well as his cousin Roberto Cepeda from the famed Cepeda family from Puerto Rico, who are practitioners and probably the most prominent practitioners of 𝗟𝗡 𝗦𝗡𝗦 in the island and around the world. So to be part of that with him, or to be one of his main, or him to be one of my main influences, was something that to this day he has a little spot here in the back of my mind. All the scoldings and all the lessons and all the stuff that he taught me. And through that, I was allowed to grow and flourish and be around the masters. You know, Tito, Roberto Cepeda, Jose Rivera, Juan Gutierrez, who's the founder of Los Pleneros, Marcial Reyes, Sammy Tanco, Nelly Tanco, all of the elder practitioners and all the people who kind of had a little bit of, in some one way or another, kind of had a part of me growing up and a part of me becoming a musician. Those are memories that are kind of blurry in the back of my head, but I try to ask questions even if I don't know. I ask my mother and I ask Julia Gutierrez, who's Juango's daughter, and those are fond memories. My family we were active. There's I think there might be a photo of all of us at some point in there. If it's this, Tito Cepeda, as you can see on the subidor, Roberto standing behind him, Sammy Tanco standing behind him. The little guy with the little braids in the corner sitting next to him with the maraca is me. My mother is on the right of the picture in the white blouse. That's my mother. My sister has the orange shirt on with the blue jeans, and the little girl dancing is Julia Gutierrez, who's the daughter of Juan Gutierrez. So we all had a part of that, and we were all completely active, and my family became family. The Gutierrez family, my family, everybody. We spent Christmas together. We were always together. So those are memories that to this day are still prominent in my life. Through Los Pleneros, I met Tito Matos, moved to from Puerto Rico to New York City about 1994, and his first moving there as a young man to New York. One of his first attractions, one of the first people they told him to meet was Los Pleneros, as being the prominent group of 𝗟𝗡 𝗦𝗡𝗦 in New York City in the diaspora. And through him joining Los Pleneros, there were other young Puerto Ricans that were. Felt like it was a very big migration of Puerto Ricans from the island. At that point, there were various points of Puerto Ricans migrating from the 20s. My grandmother, and I feel like every so and so there was a large migration, and in the 90s there was a large migrations of young Puerto Ricans coming to study in New York City, coming to study in Queens College, and two other young Puerto Ricans that moved from the island to New York City was 𝗟𝗣𝗩𝗘𝗦, an amazing arranger, composer, all-around reed saxophone player. And 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦, who's another all-around composer, arranger, saxophonist, flautist. And they began sometime around 96, 97. This concept of a group that was more about blending, keeping the identity of Puerto Rico and Bomba en Plena and blending it with the harmonies and ideas of jazz and rock and hip hop, and through that came out a group called Viento de Agua. And Viento de Agua, through the minds of these three young Puerto Ricans who had a different approach to it, let's say, compared to the masters of Tito and Juango and Marcial, they they did something completely special. They did something that was at that moment not even in Puerto Rico happening. And sometime around 97, I don't remember how it happened. I don't remember what happened. If I was to tell you specifically what happened, I couldn't tell you. I remember being at their first gig, their first presentation. I'm not sure if it was in Clemente Soto Vélez. This is a community center downtown. I'm not sure exactly where it was. And I remember somehow jumping on stage with them and them giving me a pandereta, and from then I was part of the group. I was part of the group. I remember going to rehearsals. I was about 7 years old at the time. And yeah, this is the first recording, the first album, the first record. It's called De Puerto Rico al Mundo. I think you can still find it. And that group joined. I was Tito in the middle. Juan Gutierrez, who's the director of Los Pleneros, myself, and that group joined 3 generations basically of practitioners who are now living in New York City. Myself being the last generation. And yeah, Tito and Ricardo and Alberto were the first ones that I remember. Ricardo tell me stories about him talking to my mom about the studio and saying, we're paying a lot of money here. John Fausti engineered it, so we're paying a lot of money for one of the best engineers of all time. If he can't, handle it, we can't be wasting a lot of time with him. And he would tell me that story, and now at 30 years old, he'd say to me, "We had more problem with the older guys than with you." I had an aptitude for learning music. I want to say gift, because I don't want to put that on myself, but I had a way of learning music and memorizing music, and to this day I still remember those breaks. I still remember those songs. And that was basically my first introduction to being a professional musician. From the first gigs I got paid for were those gigs. The first recording I got paid for, first recording that I'm credited on, was that. And through that, a lot of other doors were opened to me. A lot of other people I was introduced to. Quick side note, and as you know, I'm the percussionist for Eddie Palmieri, and when I first joined Eddie's band, his son, we were having a conversation. His son said, "What was the first time you?" And I said, "Well, I did this recording of Viento de Agua, and then I think maybe, I don't know if it was before, I believe it was after. There's a record called the 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 Piano that Eddie put out, and on that record, Grammy Award-winning record, on that record, he recorded a Bomba en Plena. And for the Bomba en Plena, he said his words, he says to me, I asked Jose Clausel, find me the best guys to do this. And he called the Pleneros, which were Tito and Juango, and so they were recording. They were going after that to record this plena for Eddie Palmieri, and they brought me along as a, we're gonna be around a legend. Let's bring the kids, or you can watch and you can learn. And I remember being in the studio, and Jose Clausel knew my mother from the neighborhood, from East Harlem, and somehow it comes up, yo, that kid plays. And I remember just being a kid there. I remember everything being larger than life. The console, John Fausti was engineering that too. I just remember everything feeling really big because I was 7 years old. Everything feeling like the mic stands were just humongous to me. And somehow I ended up in that booth with 𝗟𝗡 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥 on my hand. And then it was like this thing, look at this kid. And I said that to Eddie Palmieri II, which is Eddie's manager, his son. And he says to me, you were that little kid that went, hey, Pop. And Eddie remembered me from being that small kid. He goes, you see, man, you see how the world turns? He goes, the world turns. And, you know, you're right back here. So that's a quick little anecdote from that time. But Viento de Agua was definitely one of my my opening roles, one of my, you know, that I can remember. I know I had been on stage before and I had been on big stages before, but my memory of first concerts and first feeling of union and first feeling of group, and I think that my mom would let them pick me up. I remember I would be with Tito all the time. I used to sleep at Tito's house. I used to like I remember just always wanted to be around Tito. Even when we didn't have anything to do, I was always wanted to be around Tito. And it was the first feeling of union, the first place where my mother would let me go to rehearsals and not have to worry about that I was okay, because she knew that Juango was there. She knew that Tito was there. She knew that Ricardo was there. She knew that all these guys were like my fathers. Basically, everybody in that picture were all, to this day, are guys that I look to as father figures. Those are memories that you have to cherish, and those are people that I have to forever be grateful for. And hey, Pancho. Pancho with the archives. Pancho always got we got some videos up here for you, Pancho. I know you're the man. One of the first memories I have was actually being on stage with them in the first kind of well, there were a lot of, I don't know which one was queued up first, but we used to play every Thursday night in a spot called Gonzalez, and Gonzalez still is just in New York City. And those were my first, these were my first memories of playing and being around these guys and being a musician and being part of the hang. And, you know, and I just remember a Thursday night. What was it? It was a Thursday or Tuesday night. I'm not quite sure. I remember it was during the week, and we used to have this place bumping, and there was about 12 guys on a little stage. At that time, the stage was a little box, and if you can see, if they start playing it, I'm like down in the bottom. I am down in the bottom, like sitting down playing. There's 𝗟𝗩 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥 on the back, playing piano to the right. That's Joe Filer. These are all guys that are legendary musicians in the New York scene now. Waldo Chavez on bass behind. That's 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗢𝗥. That's el gran 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗢𝗥 singing. That's me below him. On my knee, that's Tito with the white shirt. Juango over there. And I remember as a kid, and I could just keep playing, and I just liked being up there. Ricardo to the left, Alberto to the right. And like I said, my memories were just of it. My memories were just of everything feeling so big, of everything being like larger than life. And I was just, you feel like an ant kind of going amongst everything that was going on. And yeah, those are memories that I can't, you know, possibly ever forget about or forget. I'm sorry. One of my other memories was, I think we have another cue of it, of us, our first big concert and our first kind of headline concert was in Hostos Community College. And yeah, I was a little older here. This might have been 98. Yeah. Yeah, I was a little older here. Alberto, from right to left, Alberto Toro, Richard Knott, Joe Carter, Ricardo Ponce. Domado Requito Solo. That's one of my main influences as far as Plena, and he brought a whole new phase of Plena in New York City, as well as in Puerto Rico. Last Body Scenario on drum set in the back. Their influence as far as what's going on now with Puerto Rican music. Waldo Chávez on bass. That's the great Luis Perdomo on piano in the back. So to be around all these giants of music in New York City is something that to this day I look back on, and I look at these videos now and I look back on it, and I don't, how I could be so lucky is beyond me, you know, to as a child, all these guys know who I am, and still to this day remember, you know. Luis Perdomo said that to me the other day. He says, "You're 30 years old, man. I feel like you were 8. You just 8 last year. We were playing with Viento, Agua." And it becomes a huge part of my life and who I am, and part of the identity of who I am. You know, all those guys were, you know, like I said before, father figures to me, and it became a huge part of my identity. Viento de Agua. So I owe them a huge debt of gratitude of having that faith in me, and being able to lead me towards where I needed to go. And about 1998, we were playing with Viento de Agua in SOBs, and we opened up for Manny Oquendo and 𝗟𝗓𝗓, which is one of my favorite bands, and Manny Oquendo being one of my favorite percussionists or musicians of all time. And at that time, Andy and Manny had a relationship, had a mentor-mentee relationship already with a group of young musicians from Hartford, Connecticut. And within that, those kids used to go to these gigs, and it happened to be that we were playing with Viento de Agua, and they had a young group of had put together a young band called Latin Flavor, and they happened to be there that night. The Curtis brothers, 𝗟𝗓𝗙 𝗟𝗓𝗡. I'm not sure if the older brother Damien was there. I'm sure he was. Their father and their mother, Ted and Abby. Who else was there? Joel, 𝗟𝗣 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗡 was there with his father, Jorge, and I remember them coming up to me and then remembering from the Eddie record that I had made an appearance on, and they kind of knew who I was from that. So there were kind of already stirrings of this young kid who was had aptitude for music and for drumming more specifically. And I don't know what the conversation was. I'm 8 years old. I'm worried about, I may have had my Game Boy in my hand because it was very much that. There was very much times where I had to swap out the Game Boy for Bandereta, like backstage, like Game Boy. And when it was time to play here, and I put down the Game Boy and I took the drum and it was time to go. There's very much pictures of me on the road with these guys, or Viento, Agua, like Game Boy in my hand, like very, very, very much still an 8-year-old kid. And I don't know how the conversation, like I said, I don't know how the conversation came about. But they were very much interested in kind of getting together with me. And so I remember, I don't know how long it was afterwards, and me and my mother being on a train to Hartford, Connecticut, and showing up to the Curtis's house. And I remember they had their basement was all a drum set, a bass, a piano. They had everything set up. And we started jamming, we started playing. And I remember our first gig, I believe there's a picture of my first gig with them. It was about 1999. And this was like the Hartford, like Civic Center. I don't remember what this was. It was some festival, and it was, you know, one of the attractions was a group of young kids who had aptitude for Latin jazz. That's myself. That's 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 on bass, who was the actual bass player for Eddie Palmieri as well. Amongst a whole line of jazz greats. He is one of himself, one of the greats of his instrument. Now, and we grew up together. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and Kez might have been about 14. And it became like another family. We spent so much time together rehearsing, and we had gigs, and it was we were kids. So after we had a rehearsal, we'd go back in the backyard and play basketball and ride bikes, and you know, their father Ted was huge on making sure that I stayed a kid. He used to take me, we used to go to the batting cages. That was one of my favorite things. I'm a huge baseball fan. Batting cages, we used to ride bikes, we used to go to the lake, we used to go swimming, we used to go play tennis, and then amongst that, we say, okay, it's time to rehearse. And then we go and like rehearse for this gig we had. And one of my first memories, because I had traveled a little bit with Viento, but one of my first memories of actually touring and being out on the road for a week, obviously with my mother with me, I was still underage, was well, at the time, at the beginning was Latin Flavor, and then as they got older and we got older, kind of they changed the name to Insight, basically off of 𝗟𝗩𝗘𝗦 tune, I believe written by Bill Fitch, called Insight, and they named the group Insight. And they had gone in '97 as guest of 𝗟𝗪 𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥 to the Havana Jazz Festival, and in the year 2000, 𝗟𝗪 was still running the jazz festival, and 𝗟𝗪 invited us as a group, and we played this jazz festival as a group, and we played maybe 4 or 5 times. We might have played in that festival, and that is the whole group there. That's us at 𝗟𝗪𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥𝗜𝗚 la música, and that was us opening for Climax actually, and it was a huge experience. And to get off the stage and to see guys like Changuito watching us, and musicians from Manolito Su Trabuco and Boris Luna from Los Bambang, and all these guys were there watching. Guys from Claudio Banco, that's where I first met Amadito. And you had all these guys from a whole different realm of music. It's the same genre, the same idea, and the same curriculum, but a whole different, kind of clique of music. We were used to New York, and the guys from New York, and all these guys showed us love, and that was one of the first experience of us being international and kind of going out. After that, we did a whole tour of California. We did tours of Texas. It was Oklahoma. We opened up for 𝗟𝗣𝗦𝗘𝗦. Like we were kind of yeah we were all over the place. That was the early 2000s, 2001. Then 𝗟𝗣 and I believe Ray and some of those guys were the older guys, were already 19, 18, 19, going off to college. And my mother told me, like, I basically wanted to go to college. I wanted to skip high school and I wanted to go with them to college. And that was my experience with them. With another group of people that I have to definitely, I owe a debt of gratitude to, the whole Curtis family, the Fuentes family, and for giving me that experience and that opportunity to thrive as a musician, actually, and to dive into other realms of music. My first jazz records, the first jazz records that I ever listened to were because of 𝗟𝗩 and 𝗟𝗩𝗓. I remember sitting in that room, and to that time, my thing was Cuban music because of my mother's travels to Cuba, and I had already traveled to Cuba a bunch of times. Cuban music, Puerto Rican music, very much salsa from New York. I was very much immersed in that, but jazz was a whole different spectrum for me. So my first jazz records, I remember sitting in their bedroom and them burning me CDs of, like, Art Taylor, Lee Morgan. My love for Lee Morgan is one of my favorite musicians of all time, and my love for Lee Morgan came because of 𝗟𝗩 and 𝗟𝗓𝗓. So I thank them for opening that whole realm of music to me. Around that time in 2000, man, and I'm trying to keep everything as far as my gigs and that, but my studies, I had already started in 90, backtracking a little bit to 94, 95. I started studying at Boys Harbor Conservatory with Johnny Almendra and Luis Balso. And those were the first guys, as far after the Pleneros and Viento de Agua, to kind of put me into the lane of being a professional musician. Johnny, I studied drum set and timbal and bongo and congas, and with Louis, I studied Afro-Cuban music, rumba and bata, and that's when I first got into bata. And because of them, I was able to explore, and then came on inside, and I already knew how to play congas, and because of Johnny Almendra and Luis Balso. So those are my two main influences as far as popular music. And through Johnny, and through the Harbor, it came about the information about a competition called the Thelonious Monk competition. And Thelonious Monk competition every year was dedicated to a different instrument. And in 2000, they decided to do it for hand drums. So as a 10-year-old kid, my mother said, well, let's send in the audition tape, and whatever comes about it. She always helped. She always held my expectations, and she was always very, very realistic. And I feel that's why I get my realism from. I'm very realistic on things. Some things may happen, some things may not happen. The idea is to work towards them, and if they don't happen, then it wasn't meant to be. If it happens, then thrive on that and continue with that. So her idea going into that competition was, let's send in this audition tape. And I remember my audition tape being horrible. Like, I don't know what I remember what I played, but I didn't put any effort into it. I was a 10-year-old kid. I didn't put any effort into it. And because of my reputation with Viento de Agua, my reputation with Insight, that I had developed in a very short period of time, I believe the judges for that part of, or before the competition, like the audition tapes, was like Steve Barrios, who's one of my influences, one of my favorite drummers of all time. And they kind of heard about this kid, and they said, "That's the kid, huh?" And I know it wasn't based on my audition tape. I know for a fact it was not based on my audition tape, and somehow I got through into the semifinals, and they said, no, this kid, we know this kid can play. I know it wasn't based on. I know it had to be some people in that room going, no, throw this out, and there was some people, because of my reputation, going, no, this kid can actually play. Let's put him through, and they put me through at 10 years old, and I remember going to the semifinals. Everything, the competition took place in Washington, D.C. And side note, there hasn't been another competition, hand drum competition. They continue to do the Thelonious Monk, but the hand drum competition has only been one. It was in 2000. And I remember going to D.C. with my mother and my sister, and well, just to name the guys that were in the semifinals, Renato Toms, Christian Rivera, who plays congas now, Willie Colon, Pedro Martinez, Samuel Torres, and those were just guys to name a few. Ramses Haraya, percussionist from Miami, and they were just, from I don't know how many. It came down to 10 in the semifinals, and myself being a part of that. And the first time, that's why I first met Pedro, was in the rehearsals for that. And it just happened to be that Johnny was the MD for the house band. So he had there was no favoritism, because he had no part in playing who won or who did anything. All he did was pass me the information for the competition, and everything else I went about it by myself and my mom. But Johnny was the MD, and I remember going to the rehearsal, and he had picked out the song I was going to play, because I was like, I didn't know I was gonna. He goes, what are we gonna do? And I remember he said, we played. I played La Mulata Rumbera by Peruchin, and we set it up. And I remember I got into play the first little bit of it, and the structure was, you take a solo in the beginning, you play the body of the song, you take a solo within the song, and then you close and you take a solo at the end. And man, it was I remember playing a little bit, and he started counting off the song, and the song lasted about a minute, and he said, okay, next. I was like, because he already knew I had already rehearsed it, and he had tried to prepare me as much as he could. And going into this competition was nerve-wracking, around adults, around, part of the rules was that you couldn't have technically been a professional. You couldn't have a record under your name. You couldn't have any of that. So most of these guys were all amateurs at that point. But still been around the realm of music and the realm of being a musician. So all these guys were all a little more seasoned than I was. And then the judges were just gods. the judges were all gods walking the earth, the gods of drumming walking the earth. Giovanni Hidalgo, Ray Barretto, Candido Camero, Milton Cardona, Babatunde Olatunji, Big Black, and I may be missing one more person. But I believe those were the 7 judges or something like that. And then the opportunity to be around these guys, and I was just like the first time of just really, truly. I think that we showed the picture before. This was the end. So I went from semifinals of 10 to the final of 5. And between the semifinals and the finals, I remember my mother was always being like, if you didn't come out, then it's, it's okay. It's fine. We're here. You enjoyed it. And when I think Billy D. Williams was actually announcing the finalists, and when he said my name, I was just like, what are we doing here? Like, why is he saying my name? Like, and that was one of those moments that, and I actually placed third place amongst, first place was Pedrito, 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗘𝗦 was second place, and I came out third place. And that experience was something that I hold, and there's still people to this day who say, "You that kid that won the Thelonious Monk, right?" I said, "I didn't win. Pedrito won, obviously, because Pedrito is who Pedrito is, and he's amazingly talented." But yeah, just the ability to be around these guys. That first picture was the end, like the last jam, the one of us on stage. Yeah, and as you can see, the gods walking the earth, and myself trying to play a little 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗘𝗦, try to be a part of that magic. Ray Barretto, Giovanni Hidalgo, Milton Cardona, who Milton was a huge huge influence as far as, in that competition. Huge pep talks and huge just faith in my ability, and knowing that I was able to do stuff. So Milton was one of those guys that, we miss dearly. And the second picture was at the finals, after the final concert. Yeah, as the guys in the house band, 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗘𝗦 was no longer with us. Vince Cherico was there in the back. Myself, as you can see, Johnny Almendra to the right in the suit, is Christian Rivera next to me, Pedrito behind me, Samuel Torres next to him, to his right, Ramsey Saraya all the way at the end to the right of the picture, Herbie Hancock in the picture as well. Like these are so just to be around these guys was a huge boost for me, and a huge experience in my life. And just to have a childhood like that, like I said, Game Boy for half of it, drums for the other half of it, and just experiences around those guys were things that, yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah. I don't know. I need to know if that was the last one. I don't be missing anything. I think I'm cool. That's my childhood. I don't know. I don't know if you could call it a childhood, but that's what my childhood was kind of based on. I think we can move on. Maybe. Jules, let me know. Yes. Oh, yes. See, I know I'm gonna start rambling. I'm gonna forget stuff. So the Pleneros continue to be a huge part of my life. The first video, I want to show the first video because it's hugely important for me, and it's a video that there are times where I get choked up about it. This is the last time Tito 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗘𝗦 played an actual drum. He went through a sickness with diabetes, and he lost most of his limbs to diabetes. So this is the last time he played a drum, and for me to be there and to be with him was a huge moment in my life. I was about 13 years old. As you can see, this is part of a celebration. Los Maestros, Los Pleneros drum. That's Tito there at the end. That's me in the back playing 𝗟𝗏𝗦𝗘𝗦. He's such an influence on me. His approach to the drum, and any drum he played, but his approach to the drum, his body language, everything was just, not to mention what he was playing, but everything about him is basically heavy influence. I mean, heavy influence of who I am on stage, who I try to be, as a person, and Tito was definitely that. As Victor Vélez, singer for La Libre now in Puerto Rico. Tanco, Nelly Tanco, Juan Gutiérrez, Tito, Tomato, Tito Cepeda. Roberto Cepeda, Tata Cepeda. This video for me, it's a huge memory. I still remember this day. To think about the last time that my teacher, that one of the guys who first introduced me to this, to music. To think of that, that's the last time he ever touched the drum. Not ever touched the drum, because after he was still teaching and stuff, but to see him fully play a drum like that, there's times where I think about him and I just have to go back to this video. His sound, you can see the bandages on his arms from his passion for what he was doing was just something else. And he went he went to the doctor, and the doctor told him, you have to take a break, you can't play, it's gonna get worse. And and I remember he went to the show and we were playing, and he went and he sat at the table, and he wasn't, and the moment, this I don't remember if Juan invited him up or somebody, and that was the last time, man. It's to think about it, it's a little sad, but he passed me everything he knew. So to look at this and to see that, it's just very special to me. His passion and his sound and his presence and everything was just on another level, and I love him to death for it still to this day. All right, Jules. So we I could. This is one of those videos that I could keep watching, and I know we really want to keep it rolling. Through Los Pleneros, I was able to gain other experiences as far as growing up as a musician. So my last, before I decided to move on and pursue other things, they had given me title of MD. So there were times where there were multiple times. There was a record that I produced for Los Pleneros, the last record of Los Pleneros, the live record, myself and 𝗟𝗢𝗙 produced. And I felt like it was my duty, because a lot of the elders had passed, or a lot of the elders had retired, or a lot of the elders were no longer on stage. And I felt like it was my duty, coming from where I started from with them, to try to continue the legacy and try to keep it, and try to keep the name of Los Pleneros so strong. So one of our last, as I did before I moved on, was a live video for Martin Cohen at 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘. I think Jules might have some of that. And this was just me introducing a new wave of Puerto Ricans who had migrated from the island. So you see a lot of younger guys that had migrated in 2010 from Puerto Rico and came here and really experienced Bomba en Plena here. And it was a whole new idea. So it was the same thing that happened with Tito and Ricardo and all of them who came from Puerto Rico in 94. These same Puerto Ricans that came from Puerto Rico in 2010 are experiencing the same thing. And the common denominator there is Los Pleneros de la 21, creating keeping their identity of being Puerto Ricanos, even as they lived in New York City. So this was a huge I felt a huge deal for me. And yeah, if we have it queued up, choosing. Takai Curtis, the Curtis brothers. Omi Ramos, Iván Renta. Gabo Lugo, one of my favorite percussionists. Julia, that's the little girl who's dancing in the picture. That's Julia there. That's Juango next to her. That's the founder, the rapper. Carolyn Nieves was one of those who migrated from Puerto Rico. Nelson Matthew Gonzalez, who grew up with me amongst the Pleneros children's workshop. His grandfather is the legendary Plenero. Apolo Ayala, who was another one of those who moved from Puerto Rico to New York City recently, the last 10 years. So that's a huge part of my life. Nicky Lavoy, another percussionist from New York City, Puerto Rico, from New York City. Saluda a toda mi gente, la gente de Costa Rica, la gente de la bandera argentina. Omi Ramos, another one of those young Puerto Ricans that came from the island to New York City in the last couple of years. So it was a group of us, and I felt like it was definitely important for us to keep the tradition and continue the evolution. What Viento, Agua did, what everybody did. That's basically kind of the tail end of what the Pleneros are and what the Pleneros mean to me as far as my life, my childhood, and just my life in general. Whenever you're ready, Jules. So yeah, that ending with insight, like I said, I kind of skipped forward a little bit, but ending with insight was kind of then my teenage years and my growth into who I am now. Up to you, Jules. Yeah, we could go into the next section. I guess we can. So, all right. in 20, I went through a couple of different transitions in my life as far as what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be and who, you know. And in about 2012, I was 22 years old, 21 years old, and I was in New York City playing gigs here and there and doing things and playing a lot of bata and playing a lot of tambol, Afro-Cuban tambol, which is another huge part of my life, of who I am. And I decided to move to California. I moved to California. I lived there for about a year, 8 months to a year. I lived there. And when I came back to actually do some work with Los Pleneros. I came back to do a tour of like the southern states with Los Pleneros. And being back in the city, I run into Anthony Carrillo, who is one of the goats of percussion. I mean, like, yeah, there's so much I could say about him. And another huge influence in my life, another musician who's known me since I was a child. And I run into him at a bomba gig, and this is the thing about bomba being so influential in my life. A bomba gig with this group called 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗡𝗦. No, it doesn't no longer exist in New York City, but he called me and said, "Yo, Camilo here?" I said, "Yeah." So I go to this gig, and Anthony Carrillo is there, and he sees me and he gives me a hug. I had been gone for all this time. Nobody had seen me. I kind of disappeared. I kind of didn't tell anybody where I was going. And he says to me, "Camilo, are you here?" And I was like, "I'm here." For like, I really kind of didn't. I was in the air. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in the city. I missed the city a lot. Because you know, it's a difference between being a visitor and being a resident. In California, so I was so used to visiting and going to visit, and being a resident was different for me. The lifestyle was definitely way more laid back. So I missed the city. I miss being able to go to a bodega at 2 a.m. and be open and get something to drink or whatever. Like, I'm a city boy, man. I'm New York City born and raised. So that's I very much miss that. So I digress. I'm sorry. Anthony Carrillo says, "Are you here?" So I'm here now. Like, so he says to me, "I have a session with Palmieri." He had just got back into kind of contact with Palmieri. They recorded this record, a soundtrack for 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘 Garcia's basketball history documentary. I forgot the name. The name is escaping me now. Doing it in the park, right? And so they were recording this record for that, this soundtrack for that. And he says to me, "Camilo, I have to do some bata stuff on that. Come to the studio." So I meet him at the studio. I go and do batas them, and I meet Palmieri and Maestro, and shakes my hand, introduces himself. We talk for a bit, and so we go in and knock out this bata stuff. And it was stuff for that, and it was stuff for the next record that was coming out, 𝗟𝗡𝗅𝗍𝗓. So we kind of recorded a little bit for both things. And it was a setup, man. Yeah, it was most definitely a setup. I didn't know that there were transitions going on within the band, and some guys were leaving and we're trying to find, you know, replacements and go about it. And Palmieri is very much meticulous and very much knows what he wants and knows knows the musicians that are required, or what's required of a musician. The preparation a musician is required to play his music and to be, you know, in that chair, any chair in that band. And Anthony Carrillo, his trust in Anthony Carrillo was so profound that he basically, Anthony said, when he found out I was back, he says, "I got the kid for you." And Eddie had never seen me play, but he trusted Anthony's word so much. He says, "Okay, bring him through." And Anthony brought me to the studio, and Eddie Palmieri II, his son, says to me, I hear you play timbales." I went, "A little bit, yeah, I guess." And he goes, "Well, man, you know, give me your card. You know, you never know. I might need somebody for a gig or sub or something. I'm cool. I'm not thinking about it. And this is the realism that my mother instilled in me from the competition, from before, but like just being a child of, nothing can hurt. Nothing can hurt. Go about it. If it doesn't work out, then hey, you don't lose anything. So that mentality definitely kicked in. I gave him my number, and a couple of weeks later, I get a call, and the rest is history. My first gig with him was September of 2013, I believe. And I think there's a photo of all of us. This was 2016. This was us in Peru. This is in Peru. They gave him a statue. In Peru, in 𝗟𝗩𝗦, there's a square where there's a statue, I believe, of 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗧𝗢. There's a statue. There are three park benches, and on each park bench, there's one of 𝗟𝗩𝗪𝗧𝗢, I believe. There's one of Héctor Lavoe, which is the most famous one, and the one next to him they gave to Eddie on 2016, the statue of Eddie Palmieri in 𝗟𝗩𝗦. So this is us at the statue unveiling, and being part of this it was amazing. It was being part of history. Being around him is just being a part of history. So that's something that I'm extremely indebted to Anthony Carrillo for having that confidence in me. And through Eddie, I've been able to travel the world. And Anthony told me when I first joined the band, he says, man, people knew me. People knew who I was because of 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘𝗦, and people kind of saw me in 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘𝗦, and was kind of like, this kid, and people in Puerto Rico knew me, maybe New York, people outside of New York knew me. But it wasn't until he says to me, it wasn't until I joined Palmieri that the world started knowing who I was. And I really couldn't understand that concept. And I believe it was that trip to Peru. That was the first time I've been to Peru. And to get off the plane and there be people there waiting for autographs. And my thing is, it's Eddie. Eddie is a legend. He's a living legend. He's one of the last living legends that we have from the era of the era of Palladium and the era of all that. Of the big three, he was a guy that saw that. He was a guy that que compartió con ellos. He's a guy that broke bread with the big three. The very much close friends with those guys. So the thing, he's the last of that is being a part of history, and being able to sit next to him at an airport and hear him tell stories is very much a part of or shaped me out now as I guess I can call myself an adult. I don't know. I guess 30 years old. So kind of still shaping myself. I still don't think I'm done. I still don't think I'm done learning. I still don't think I'm done. I feel like every 10 years, you're not that, I'm not that person who I was at 20. So I feel like everything evolves, and those people that are within those 10 years, those people that influence you definitely have a part of who you become later on. So Eddie is a huge influence on me, not just musically, obviously musically, but personally. I think there might be a video here. I don't know from where me playing with Eddie. This was us, our last trip to Peru. This was our last trip to Peru, 2019, and to be on stage headlining a festival, Sonora Ponceña, Los Pampán, us, in front of 20,000 people at that point, was just an experience. And to be with Eddie. Saluda a la gente de España. Being on stage with him is I call it, it's a ball of energy. it's and you have to be able to keep that energy up, man. It's an experience unlike any other. The great Jimmy Bosch, one of my favorite human beings, man. One of my favorite human beings in this planet, man. He's an amazing person, man. Amazing musician as well. Funny cat too. He's a crazy funny cat. Whenever you're ready, Jules. Yeah, so Eddie is man. It's kind of no words to describe Eddie, and those who know him and those who are around him. You know, 𝗟𝗩 was there before. He can tell you. There's kind of no words to describe that man and the power that man has, and just him as a human being is just, you know, forget about the stage and the presence and the power and everything that comes with that. Just him as a human being, man. Heavily influenced my life. I think Joe said we have some questions, so there's some questions. I'm ready. Eddie más me recomienda el LP Tito Puente o el LP Prestige. Yo te voy a recomendar el timbal que te hace a ti sentirte bien. Los dos son timbales espectaculares porque son LP. Ya el sello de LP, ya la historia que tiene el LP de hacer instrumentos buenos y instrumentos de calidad, ya todo el mundo lo sabe. Yo recomiendo un timbal que te hace a ti sentirte bien y el timbal que te ayuda a ti buscar tu sonido propio. Porque quizás Tito Puente, Prestige, uno, ¿me entiendes? Todo el mundo es diferente. Yo recomiendo el timbal que te haga a ti sentirte bien. Los dos para mí son espectaculares. Los dos, cualquiera, viste, en ese video estaba tocando un Prestige, en otro lado yo tocaba un LP, en un Tito Puente, ¿me entiendes? Pues depende de lo que es, depende de lo que te haga a ti sentirte bien. At an old age, I would like to learn and develop my handling skills. I know I'm in school. I have no schooling. Any suggestions? Can you put that question up again, Jules? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I like to learn and develop my handling skill. It's never too old. It's never never too old to learn anything. You're never too never too old to learn anything. You have to my biggest thing is watching it and being around other musicians, watching the elders. I'm huge on just visually watching, and now YouTube has given us everything and the information, the founding information from when I was younger, even to when my teachers were younger. The founding information is not there, so there's a lot of information now given to people. That's a lot. It's a lot easier to get information now. The best way to go about it is watch. You know, imitation is probably the best form of flattery. So I've been able to find myself a little bit of what I think it's I'm sorry, I'm getting messages and stuff. The way to find yourself is to mash everybody you like together. Giovanni, that's what makes Giovanni Hidalgo probably one of the geniuses. He was able to take all those masters and blend them into one. So that's, for me, that's the easiest way. If you feel like, you know, and there's books you can go, you could there's books, there's, you know, syncopation, stick control is the Bible of stick control. You want to learn with sticks, and so there's information out there. You just have to go searching for it. And like I said, no one is ever too old to learn anything. Any more questions, Joel? Or are we ready we can move on, or let me know. Whenever you're ready. So for the instrument connection portion of this, I want to talk about probably one of the first instruments that I ever laid my hands on. 𝗟𝗡 de bomba. I said we showed a couple of videos. The video of Tito Cepeda, video earlier of Viento de Agua, the drums that 𝗟𝗩𝗦 was playing in the Pleneros video for 𝗟𝗡𝗩𝗘. Bomba itself is probably one of the oldest living expressions in the Caribbean, in the Americas. It's dated back about 500 years old, and its connection to Africa, it's our direct, in Puerto Rico, the direct connection to Africa. So the barril itself is made, right? Like the graphic we have here. The barrel drums represent the history of slaves in Latin America. You can leave it up, so I can read it. Joel, yeah, thank you. History of slaves in Latin America who preserved their African roots by keeping a musical tradition alive while remaining true to its African roots. The bomba genre of music has significantly affected contemporary Puerto Rican music and culture, and has itself been affected by other forms of Latin American music. So it's bomba is a direct connection to Africa, and all the influences had in popular music is beyond what we can imagine. We think about Rafael Cortijo coming from the Bates and coming from the enslaved Africans, bringing it, you know, Cortijo, Gran Combo, bringing it into dance salon, into dance halls, bringing it into other main stages, and it blending with salsa. And that's what salsa is, a blend of all that music together. The barril de bomba is the traditional drum of bomba music. A lot of the contemporary stuff is played on congas and stuff. The traditional drum It's called the barril de bomba. Barril meaning barrel, and bomba being the genre of music. And it's called the barril. Y se llama el barril porque es específicamente un barril. Lo africano, the enslaved Africans, would take any barrel because it was they were working on sugar plantations and plantations of coffee and in the Caribbean. The easiest material to find, besides the animal skins that were used to put on top, were these barrels that transported back to where where the enslaved Africans were working, back to the Europeans, and back. They were transported in barriles that would keep it all fresh. Sugar cane, coffee, rice, and those were the easiest things. So when they were done, they were thrown away, and our ancestors would take those. And I think Jewel has the graphic of how what it is. The first one, Jewel. I'm sorry. Yes, the barril de bomba is a traditional drum used in bomba music of Puerto Rico. Originally, they were built from the wood of rum storage barrels and goat skins put above it, adjusted with torniquetes, screws, cuñas, or wedges. Right? Those torniquetes or cuñas were all systems of tuning used the same way the congas tunes with screws or metal. Before it was metal, it was all made of wood. The cuñas are actual pegs that were put up, and then there was a string put around the aro, from the aro to the pegs, and the pegs were hit with hammers, and it would pull down the skin. Those original form. The torniquetes were also the strings, a piece of wood put through the strings and turned until the string would tighten up and bring down the aro, bring down the rim. The bomba drum. There was another graphic that I could read, Jules. I'm sorry. At least 2 drums are required to perform bomba music and dance: el primo, or subidor, the lead drum who follows the dancer, and the 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘, which keeps a steady beat. Right? Bringing I don't want to say the influence, but the bomba has cousins. Bomba has cousins scattered around the Americas and mostly African influenced countries. And we have the 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗧𝗢𝗥. It's a close cousin to bomba. La tumba francesa in Cuba and Santiago de Cuba is a direct cousin of bomba. There's some other ones that I was studying before, but those are the main 2, because I think about the actual drums and the form of what it is. Bomba, like I said, we're talking about the two drums. The primo subidor is the drum. Primo meaning cousin. Primo meaning premier from French Creole. The lead drum, and the 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘, which 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘 means drum of remembrance. It's a drum that brings us back to what our ancestors did before us. So that's the drum that keeps the main. So let's say 𝗟𝗓𝗏, what we heard before in the video, was a rhythm called 𝗟𝗏, which 𝗟𝗏 in itself has, in Santiago de Cuba, 𝗟𝗏 is something in tumba francesa. There's a rhythm called 𝗟𝗏, and in New Orleans and the Congo Square, and that influence, they had the yuba. They have, it's all connected. It's all connected through our African ancestors. So the 𝗟𝗩𝗦𝗘 and yuba would pa tugudum pa tugudum pa tugudum pa, and the primo would play the main, and then its job was to respond on time, not after, not before, on time to what the dancer is playing. So the barril, like I said, it's a huge influence on me, because the first drum that I touched, the first drum that I tried to master. I can't say master because I don't feel like anybody's a master of anything. We get really good at something, and we try our hardest to truly, but the drum in itself is always gonna hold mysteries and hold stuff to that we can't truly understand. Maybe when we get 90, those guys that are older, and those guys, it takes us that long to truly understand the power that we have, that we hold, or the power that we have, just the power of music in itself, and to transcend time, to transcend, to put us somewhere else, put us somewhere else. It's kind of hard to explain, but my first idea, my first thought of that was definitely from a barril de bomba. So yeah, that's our hopefully that was helpful in education for our education spotlight. Yeah, whenever you're ready, Jules. So we're gonna wrap up. Thank you everybody for tuning in today to this live. I know it's been a lot, and I might have rambled a little bit. I'm sorry. Please make sure you follow my Facebook, my music page, /CEMG Music. My Instagram is probably what I'm most active on, @I am Camilo Molina. The next chapter, please, the next chapter, LP Stories, August 27th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. East Coast time, with the maestro 𝗟𝗡𝗩. 𝗟𝗡𝗩 was a legend, and cajon building and just percussion in general. You can find all of the episodes. This is going to be an ongoing thing, so please, por favor, pueden conseguir todo. You can find everything. dwdrums.com/drum network. All the episodes will be up on there, so you can find it. They might be on the YouTube page too. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Please, thank you. Thanks to Jules Thomas for setting this up. Derek Zimmerman, Derek, you the man. 𝗟𝗣 for always taking everybody at LP, everybody at DW that treats me like family. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope it was enlightening or a little bit of insight into my childhood and my life. And so please, tune in. Make sure next episode, and keep watching. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. Thank you. Adios.